This is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Update with Tom Sullivan, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Update, exclusively right here at ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. According to the latest MetLife and U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Index, employers are having a harder time finding employees with the right skills. That's the key. Joining us now to share some more of the highlights from the index is Tom Sullivan, Vice President of Small Business Policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. You've seen him here before on our network. Tom, thank you so much for joining us on the show once again.
Jim, thank you for having me on ASBN. It's always a pleasure when we connect. Thanks.
Sure. So there's a lot of people that want to know what this index is going to be telling us. So let's cut right to the chase. So the Q4 2023 Small Business Index, what has been released? What are some of the highlights or some of the things that jump out?
Well, thank you, Jim. So first of all, it's good to just kind of level set why we do this survey in the first place. So, at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we represent over 3 million businesses in the United States. Most of them are small businesses. Yeah. And you and I can't call 3 million small businesses every day.
No, we can't.
So we rely on our partners, MetLife, to do a quarterly survey so that we can find out what's going on in the small business community. But more importantly, it's our North Star as far as what we're advocating for in front of Congress and the White House and in many state capitals throughout the country. So that's why we do it. But then cutting to the chase of what the index shows, it's kind of good news, bad news. The good news is confidence is still high. It's dipped a little bit from last quarter, but it's still relatively high. Okay. Bad news is when it comes to views on the national economy is getting more negative. And that's something you and I have seen over the past several quarters. When you ask small businesses, hey, how's your cash flow? We found that 67% of them say, oh, we're doing pretty well. But then when you say, hey, how's the national economy doing? It goes negative fast. You actually have more small businesses that are negative about the national economy than positive. And that's a concern because eventually that negativity starts coming closer and closer to the actual small business operations. We're doing everything possible to kind of keep pushing that away from small business so that they can really focus on what they do best, and that is growing and contributing to the economy, contributing to their communities. Sure. But I'd be lying if I didn't admit that pessimism about the national economy is starting to creep towards small businesses themselves. And that's really what explains that dip in confidence from last quarter to this very important last quarter of the year. Yeah.
And it's interesting because, we also watch the news that comes out and says, the jobs report came out and unexpectedly we've got a tremendous amount of jobs out there that increased substantially, and it's interesting to see. There's different things in the economy that you could be so happy about, but I feel I understand where those small business owners. I am one of those small business owners myself, but I guess I'm personally just not so down on the overall national economy. Good. Our business is doing well. So many people that I talk to here at the show, their businesses are doing well. In fact, in some cases, they can't get enough goods to get them to their consumers because they're in such high demand. But it is interesting to see that sometimes the media will come out and say, "Oh, we're in a terrible,"
I work in Washington, D.C., so the doom and gloom kind of headlines are something that I'm used to. And I love how you're really kind of putting your finger right on the pulse of what's going on. Because in your shoes as a small business owner and in other people's shoes across the countries, they are expecting greater revenues next year. Yeah. And because of that, they're going to need more employees to keep up with that demand.
That's right.
Now, the negative side to that is that you'll notice I said revenues. Yeah. I did not say profits.
Right.
Because the revenues may be going up, which is very good, but high costs, and in particular inflation. And our MetLife and U.S. Chamber of Commerce survey shows this is the 6th consecutive quarter where inflation tops the concern. Mm-hmm. So your revenues may go up, but if they're not outpacing inflation, at the end of the day, it's a negative. And that's really, I think, the biggest headwind that small businesses are facing. They're optimistic about demand. That means that they want to hire, but they also know that those costs are going up, and also the cost for an employee is going up. And yes. So they may be optimistic, but they're not blindly optimistic. And that's where some of that negativity starts bleeding into the confidence.
Sure. Which is unfortunate, because as you see, we see the Fed that said, we're gonna level off here, and we're not going to increase rates right now or for the foreseeable future, because of in us raising the rates, it's kind of working. In fact, it is working. Right. Inflation has come down quite a bit, and that's helped in many ways. But there's still that that feeling out there among businesses, obviously, that we've got some major concerns out there, and it's really just interesting. You wonder how much is the media and how much is it actually the real situation, on the ground,
Yeah, and Jim, I like how you make that distinction. You are in the media.
I'm in the media,
so you got to be a little bit careful.
I know.
You're one of the good parts of the media.
I know. I'm more of a cheerleader, maybe too much so. Maybe I'm too optimistic about business about this, but.
Well, never too optimistic. But I think what you're seeing, and I'm certainly hearing this from our small business members, is that inflation continues to go up.
Yeah.
It's just not as steep.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a victory speech you want to give to small business.
Right.
Because if it still goes up and their revenue isn't even higher, then at the end of the day, that curbs growth. And I do want to emphasize the positive part of the Fed's action, or quite frankly, the Fed's inaction of raising rates further, because eventually small businesses are going to be able to hire, and small businesses are going to be able to keep up with the demand. And that's when they need to grow, and they need capital to grow.
That's right.
And if the rates come down a little bit, that will free up some cash and allow them to grow. So I think your message and what we're hearing from our MetLife survey should send a message to the Fed like, good, keep them low, because eventually small businesses are going to go to banks to try to grow, because they find enough workers that are more expensive, and they're going to need that capital to grow and build their communities.
That's right. What are small businesses doing to find more candidates with the right qualifications? I know, as a small business owner of 5 companies myself, it's very difficult. We've got right now the openings of about 15 different job openings right now, very difficult to fill. And these are not minimum wage jobs. These are good paying jobs, but I will tell you, it's very tough out there, especially with such a low unemployment rate.
Well, in this regard, about finding qualified employees, I think small businesses have an advantage, and that actually bore itself out in our MetLife Small Business Index. It showed that the flexibility offered to employees, whether it's remote work, I'm working from my home office right now as we're talking, or flexible benefits, small businesses are in a better position to offer that flexibility. And so we see small businesses leaning into that as small employers, whereas some of their larger competitors just aren't able to have that type of flexibility, because when you're dealing with thousands of employees, it's a little bit difficult to set workplace policies that are as flexible as if you have 5 employees and you sit down with a young man or a young woman and they say, hey, I need this flexibility, and you just give them the flexibility. That's the beauty of a small business.
That's right.
I think right now we're seeing Main Street employers have an advantage because of that built-in flexibility. And that shows in our index, where it shows more employers are looking at flexibility as a way to attract good employees.
That's right. And the flexibility really can help the small business owner because, we've been hiring people that are not in the Atlanta, we're out of Atlanta here, and the Atlanta area, which can be a little bit more costly to live than if you get somebody that lives in Idaho or lives someplace out, in the rural area of Ohio that says, let me work, remotely. And guess what? Their salary might be 25% less than what we've got to pay somebody that's in, the metro here in Atlanta. They're happy with it. We're happy with it. The work is getting done. So there's also some opportunity there if small business owners open their mind up a little bit and say, you know what, maybe we really need to take a look at this, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if there's any sector that is able to pivot to account for these types of flexibilities, it is the small business sector.
Yeah.
So I think in that regard too, that small businesses certainly have an advantage. Look at the two of us. We're now just full-time cheerleaders for small business.
As we should be.
Yes.
Did your study find anything on this year's holiday sales?
The study didn't show in particular holiday sales, but there are a lot of data out there that do. And I'm glad that you asked, because this is another kind of good news, bad news story.
Mm-hmm.
The bad news is that foot traffic was down.
Okay.
The good news is that online sales were at an all-time record, and that is a hidden blessing of COVID for small business, because COVID with forced shutdowns prompted a huge percentage of small businesses to build online sales platforms or to utilize existing sales platforms. So we see more small business sellers online than ever before. So when we found out right after the holiday shopping season, which is still going on, there's still plenty of time to shop small. Let's not forget that.
That's right.
But the National Retail Federation put out a report the week after Thanksgiving showing that they had the highest level of online sales in the history of the United States.
Wow.
And that bodes well for small businesses that have a higher percentage of online presence than ever before.
That's right. And small business owners, listen up to those numbers, because one place that you need to check and do a full audit is your website. So it's got to be e-commerce friendly. You take a look at it. Sometimes we look at the front door and say, how come we haven't had a lot of foot traffic or people coming in? And meanwhile, they're trying to do business with you on your website and it's not ready to do business. So, the website allows, I think, so many small businesses a level playing field against it's big competition out there. So just one recommendation is to make sure that everything on your website is working, it connects properly. You got a phone number on there in the event that somebody does have some questions, but that's actually great news. I mean, I think that's awesome, right?
Well, not only is it great news, but I love how you're giving the advice to small business owners. And I would really love to advise small business owners that have follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Go to our small business digital platform called Co. Because Co does provide really good information about how to establish direct sales channels through the utilization of the web. And so when it comes to direct sales, there are some tricks of the trade, and our small business digital platform provides incredible advice for folks who want to enhance their online small business sales opportunities.
So, Tom, share with us, what does all this information mean for the economy overall?
Well, so overall, I mean, we keep hearing discussions about whether or not we're in a soft landing or whether or not a recession is just, a month away or 2 months away. Small businesses for a long time have believed that we're either in a recession or about to be in a recession. And so it will be interesting early in the new year to see if that's changed. I think right now, when you see inflation that is growing at less rapid of a pace, that's good news.
Right.
A lot is going to depend on whether or not small businesses can find and hire good employees. If they are able to do that, then we're going to have a soft landing that leads into boom time as far as the eye could see. But that's a big if. I mean, Jim, keep in mind that the worker shortage has existed for over 5 years.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I'm optimistic that more workers will apply and get hired by small business, but I'm also pragmatic, and I know that this isn't going to happen overnight.
No, it's not. It's not. I know your answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is now a good time to open up a small business?
It is a great time to open up a small business, and here's why. 2 reasons. First of all, technology is the great game changer for small business. It levels the playing field and allows small businesses to compete with larger competitors.
That's right.
The second applies to those entrepreneurs who are truly mobile.
Yeah.
Because right now you have better access to information on which state is the most entrepreneurial friendly than ever before.
That's right.
So if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking of starting a business and you have the luxury of being able to go anywhere in the United States, there's never been a better time to start a business than right now.
That's right. And if you are not convinced with that information, just Google successful companies that started during a downturn in the economy or a recession. It'll blow you away, the brands that are out there today that are thriving that started in an economy way worse than this one. So Tom Sullivan, Vice President of Small Business Policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, thank you once again for joining us on The Update. We very much appreciate it and look forward to next time.
Thank you, Jim. Happy holidays.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Update with Tom Sullivan.